This Sunday, AEW will hold their third annual All Out pay-per-view, this time once again returning to the Now Arena. Based just outside of Chicago, Illinois, the venue was formerly known as the Sears Center and was the home to the All In show, which was of course the predecessor to All Elite Wrestling, and also hosted the first ever AEW All Out pay-per-view, so this is very much a homecoming for the promotion. This year's card is stacked from top to bottom, with Chris Jericho's career on the line. We're set to see the in-ring return of CM Punk, as well as some much anticipated debuts expected. With that said, let's look at my preview and predictions for AEW All Out 2021. And make sure you let me know your predictions in the comments below, and if you do manage to get all of the winners right, I'll give you a shout out in my All Out review. And make sure your comment isn't edited. First, we start with the pre-show 8-man tag match between the Hardy family, taking on Orange Cassidy, Chuck Taylor, Wheeler Yuta, and Jurassic Express. I won't go into too much detail on this one as I want to get into the main matches, but I think the faces will win to kick the show off on a high. I'll go one extra and say Orange Cassidy will pin Matt Hardy, ending their feud. We've seen this match in one form or another quite a few times over the past few weeks, so let's end it here. Next up, we have the Casino Battle Royale. This was originally scheduled for the buy-in show but was moved to the main card thanks to the cancellation of Andrade vs Pac. The match will see 21 competitors battle it out for a shot at the AEW Women's World title, with 19 of those names already announced. That leaves 2 mystery wrestlers, one of which will be the final entrant, aka the Joker card. I'm going to assume that one of the yet to be announced names will be someone on the roster, so I'll keep this prediction to that of the final entrant as well as the winner. I think it's fairly obvious that Ruby Soho, formerly known as Ruby Riott in WWE, is AEW bound. I can't see a better spot to bring her in than the Joker slot in the Battle Royal, so that's what I'm going to go with for that. I think she does have a shot at winning, but if she earns a title shot right away, where do you go from there? You either have to give her the title right away or have her lose right out of the bat. So I think she'll be eliminated, potentially setting up her first feud. For that reason, I'm going to go with somewhat of a wild card for the winner and predict that Rebel, aka Reba, will come out on top, setting up an interesting build towards a match with Britt Baker. When Baker revealed that Reba would be in the match, she joked that there was no way that Reba would win, or it was something along those lines, which made me think that it could be a hint towards her doing the impossible. Next up, we have New Japan legend Satoshi Kojima heading to America for a match with former AEW World Champion Jon Moxley. Whilst this isn't as high profile as the Hiroshi Tanahashi vs Jon Moxley match that was originally planned for the IWGP United States title, Kojima is no slouch and is in fact a former 2-time IWGP Heavyweight Champion. He'll no doubt be able to put on a hard-hitting match with Mox. With that said though, I think Moxley will walk away as the winner in his home territory of AEW, overcoming the veteran. I can't see Moxley losing to a relatively unknown name to the wider American audience on an AEW pay-per-view, and that's no disrespect to him, he's just a bigger name in Japan, and AEW will likely be looking to keep Moxley strong for his next main event feud. Again, we have yet another easy to predict match, or at least I think so, between QT Marshall and Paul Wight, with the Giant making his AEW in-ring debut. Whilst QT Marshall does have the numbers advantage, surrounding himself with members of the Factory and now the Gun Club, I see this as just an obstacle for Wight to overcome as he establishes himself as a dominating figure. He should be built up with a number of wins over the course of a few sporadic matches before he's eventually toppled by one of the up-and-coming big men AEW has to offer. This means, unfortunately for QT, he's just step 1 on this path. Now we have the first of 5 championship matches on the card as Miro defends his TNT title against the ever-popular Eddie Kingston. Whilst I think that Kingston would be a fantastic TNT champion, I don't think it's the right time to beat Miro, and I can see God's favourite champion walking away victorious. I'll throw in yet another prediction as I think the mentions of his wife Lana will pay off on Sunday as she makes her AEW debut to accompany her husband to the ring. Either that or she'll show up mid-match as a distraction, giving Miro Miro a clear path to victory. Lana's non-compete clause ended on the 31st of August, just 2 days ago, which makes her free to appear in the promotion. There's no denying how good the Lana and Rusev partnership was in WWE, and I think she could add a lot to his presentation. While she's not a great wrestler, she's a fantastic manager. And this time let's have less adultery storylines, and let's just have Lana, or CJ Perry as she'll be known now, just lead her monster to the ring for destruction. Next, we've got the supposed final fight between Chris Jericho and MJF, a feud that feels like it's lasted a lifetime. MJF is currently up 3-0 against Jericho, and the latter has put his AEW in-ring career on the line. That means if Jericho loses, he can no longer wrestle in AEW. I feel like this one is a hard one to call, perhaps the hardest on the card. MJF has been so protected that I find it impossible to believe that he'll lose clean, and whenever he has lost, there's always been a built-in excuse. And on the other hand, would AEW really end Jericho's career? What I find interesting about this is that rather than the stipulation being Jericho has to retire from wrestling, it's specifically his AEW career on the line. This is what kind of sways me towards MJF. I do kind of think that Jericho has peaked in AEW, and I can't see him reaching the heights of AEW World Champion again. As well as that, I feel the Inner Circle has kind of run its course, as what really else can they do? And I think Jericho has given plenty rub to each of its members. And you know what? I've talked myself into it, and I'm going to go for a controversial Jericho loss, ending his AEW in-ring career. We have Bryan Danielson, CM Punk, potentially Adam Cole, Bray Wyatt, as well as all the names already in AEW, and the roster is getting stacked, and I struggle to see what Jericho could do going forward. So let's have Jericho do some commentary, then let him have one last run in WWE before his Hall of Fame induction. It's a controversial one, and I think it might be one that I get wrong, but I think this would be huge for MJF as he continues to ascend to the top of AEW, and he can claim to be the man that ended the career of Le Champion. And quickly, just before we continue, make sure you drop a like on the video as it helps me out a lot, and make sure you subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss any upcoming wrestling content as we head, hopefully, towards 100,000 subscribers. But now, let's press play on the video. Next up, we have a rematch from one of the best tag matches in AEW history at Double or Nothing 2019. Back then, the Young Bucks took on the Lucha Brothers in a ladder match where the Bucks retained their AAA World Tag Team titles. This time, the Bucks go in as AEW World Tag Team Champions, with the match instead happening inside a steel cage. In terms of a winner, I think I'll have to go with the Young Bucks on this one, as I think the Elite will remain on top for the time being. I kind of get the impression that the Lucha Brothers were a replacement opponent, with the original plans being for the Dark Order to get the title shot and win the titles, along with Adam Page winning the world title later on in the night. I think this was supposed to be set up by that multi-man match between the Dark Order and the Elite, where if Hangman and the Dark Order won, they each get their respective title shots. I think in the middle of that match being booked and the match taking place, that plans changed, and of course they ended up losing, meaning they had to find another opponent. And that's just my gut, so yeah, I'm gonna go with the Bucks. This next one may be the easiest pick of the night, as AEW Women's World Champion Britt Baker defends her title against Kris Statlander. Right now, there's no wrestler in the division more popular than Britt Baker, and the build for this match has basically been non-existent. It would be a bit of a shock to see Statlander beat Baker out of nowhere like that, and would do no favors for Baker's momentum. This of course then lines up with my earlier prediction of Rebel winning the Casino Battle Royale, setting up an interesting rift between their friendship. Of course, Baker would beat her, but it would be a fun few weeks of TV leading to the Grand Slam in New York. Next, we have what could perhaps be the main event, as CM Punk makes his AEW in-ring debut to take on the young Darby Allin. Punk has said he's interested in this match because if he was a kid, Darby would be his favourite wrestler, and in response, Darby said that Punk was his favourite wrestler when he was 15. However, Darby does feel overlooked, as Punk said that he's on the top of his list, with Allin adding that he'll also be the last. This should be a really interesting test for Punk, as he attempts to keep up with Darby's fast-paced offense after after 7 years away. I think the result is fairly obvious at this point, with Punk highly unlikely to come in and lose in his first match. A Punk loss could perhaps be used as part of a storyline, with him doubting if he has what it takes anymore, but other than that possibility, I do think Punk will walk away with the win. Punk needs to be kept strong, and win or lose, Darby will be elevated in the process after having such a huge spotlight on him. And before we get to the AEW World title match, remember that you can get the All Out pay-per-view for just $19.99 in certain countries using our Fight affiliate link in the description down below. And finally, we have what is expected to be the main event of the evening, with AEW World Champion Kenny Omega defending his title against Impact World Champion Christian Cage. 3 weeks ago, Christian did manage to get a win over Omega for the Impact strap, thanks to a botched interference from the Young Bucks to keep the champ strong. However, this time around, I can't see Cage getting so lucky, with Kenny Omega walking away with the title. I feel that Christian has a limit in AEW, and I can't see him being the guy like he is in Impact. And I think Omega needs to hold on to the title a little bit longer, with many dream matches on the horizon. And I'm putting this match in the main event to set up the following segment, as when Omega is celebrating, let's have him take to the mic and say he's beaten everyone that there is to beat before the final countdown hits. Enter Bryan Danielson, formerly known as Daniel Bryan, who confronts Omega with his eye on the title belt. This would then plant the seed potentially for the next pay-per-view, or maybe even at Grand Slam, with Bryan working his way up the rankings on Weekly Dynamites to earn his shot. And make sure you check out my video where I discuss 10 times that AEW wrestlers rejected WWE, including Bryan Danielson and the Elite.